Thank you so much for joining Dental Marketing Theory, a podcast by Gary Bird. In today's episode, Gary talks with Dr. Neil Patel. Dr. Neil shares with Gary his thoughts on the dental industry economy and how he is working on a new dental investment platform. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment, as all of those things really help to get the word out about dental marketing theory. Hope you enjoyed today's show.
All right, we are live for another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. Thanks for tuning in. Today is going to be a unique topic. I promise this is something that you're going to want to learn about and tune in for. But before we do that, I would love for you to leave us a quick review. And if you leave us a review, I read all of them. If you love the podcast, go leave a 5-star review. I'll actually shout you out on one of the podcasts. Or if you just say, hey, you stink, Gary, and we hate your podcast, leave a 1-star review. Either way, it's fine. Just leave a review. We have thousands of people who listen and only like 100 reviews. And so we need more reviews. Whatever platform you're on, doesn't matter. Just go leave a review. And I know you're not doing it, so go do it right now. And I really appreciate it. And I have a special guest today, Dr. Neil Patel. And what I want to start with is I met with Jeremy from Revere Partners. He actually was on a podcast. I've talked to him several times. And they do a great job. They have an investment platform that's inside of dental, and they're really big on pushing tech projects and investing into tech projects. And we kind of got into the weeds a little bit as we were talking, and we started talking about a DAO DSO. And I said, wait a second, how does that work? What is that? And he said, I got to bring the expert on and connect you guys. And that's how I ended up meeting you. So good to have you today. And I wanted to kind of dive into that right away of, what are you doing in that space in the DAO DSO? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, totally. Well, Gary, thanks so much for having me on here. Really a pleasure, and excited to talk about the DAO DSO, the concept of it, and the technology that's out there and what's possible today. The DAO DSO is kind of like, just looking at other industries, it's a way for people to kind of come together and work collectively in a way that aligns all of their interests, but also keeps everyone, autonomous. And in the context of DSOs, it's kind of a support organization that can help DSOs kind of accomplish things together rather than independently. So pulling their resources together and kind of having some sort of democratic governance, and also having the ability to kind of spin out products and services that can support a collective group that, is aligned in terms of financial interest.
Yeah, so let's approach this from, there's a couple different ways to do this. So if you know what a DAO is, then that makes sense. But if you don't know what a DAO is, like explain, let's talk about what an actual DAO is just in general outside of DSOs.
Yeah, sure. So a DAO stands for a decentralized autonomous organization. And it's basically an organization or a business that's run on blockchain with smart contracts that are essentially lines of code that are contracts that execute and kind of, can cause different things to trigger depending on what kind of contracts you have drafted up. And in a DAO, you not only have a bunch of people kind of working together for a common purpose, you've got a central fund where they can all pull together their money and kind of distribute it and vote on how they want to allocate that capital. They've also got ways to sort of, have a token on the DAO itself, sort of like a Bitcoin of the DAO, a utility token, something that can trade and act as a store of value, and typically is used to, represent either like cash flows in a business or maybe even governance, voting rights. So a DAO is kind of a way of coming together and doing business on the blockchain that's decentralized, distributed, and transparent as well.
Yeah, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you know more about this than I do, but basically what's happened, and this is the easiest way I've heard it explained, is that software eats everything, right? And so what does that mean, software eats everything? Well, when I was a kid, there was art stores on every corner. There was bookstores in every single shopping center, right? And software ate that. Like those disappeared. There used to be music stores everywhere. Those disappeared. Why? Software ate them. And it was able to consolidate all the music in the world or all the books in the world and put them all in one place where you can access them right on your phone. And it brought that all together. Now what's happening is software is beginning to eat some of the business structures and the financial structures, and also some of even like the legal structures. So like, as an example, if you go and buy a house, if you've ever bought a house before, you go through this long process and there's all these checks and balances. So first you have to put you sign a contract with a real estate agent. The real estate agent has to sign a contract with the other real estate agent. The buyer has to sign the contract. Then all the inspectors have to come in and they all have to sign contracts. And then you go to title and you line everything up. And then so all these contracts happen, and it's really a broken system when you look at it. Software could easily fix all that really, really quickly. And same with all the legal processes and all those kind of things. So what I see happening with these with blockchain, which I know we're going to go to later, is it allows for the DAO to be able to have this decentralized place where you can have these exchange of ideas, and you can have a group of people who have equal buy-in or similar buy-in, or depending on how much money they want to put in, similar to like you would have a board on a company, but it can be much bigger than just a small board. You can have a lot of people, and you can have different voting situations on that. And so having that DAO has been able to allow for people to do business transactions in different ways, in more creative ways. Like you and I could start a DAO and we could buy houses with it, and we could Airbnb those houses out for different things, and different people could buy into that. And so this, what's happening from my perspective, is now this is starting to leak into the dental industry. Tell me what I got right. What did I get wrong, or what did I leave out?
No, I think you nailed it on the head. Basically, it's a DAO is kind of providing a digital infrastructure to conduct frictionless business, like you were talking about, especially with the aid of smart contracts, which kind of automates a lot of things that would have been manual in the past. And they totally bring together people that could be all around the world, all around the country. Maybe they weren't working in the same company. But now with the DAO, they can all come together and kind of work towards a common cause. And the DAO kind of facilitates all of that digitally with currency on the blockchain. So yeah, I think that was a really good, succinct description.
Awesome. So now and again, we're just talking, sometimes people hear these terms, blockchain and DAO, and it's just software, right? That's really, at the end of the day, it's software that allows you to do business in a more precise way. And so what I see, or let me ask you this question. If you were going to argue against the DAO, right, and going into the DSO, and you were going to sit and build, an Iron Man case against it, what would be that case? Like, why wouldn't a DAO work in the DSO space?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe a good counterpoint would be some things are better run when they're more centralized. It's easier to get a cohesive group on the same page if they're under one roof. But I would argue against that and say that in today's digital age, it's easier now more than ever to work together and stay connected online. Yeah. And I think that I don't think the DAO DSO is here to replace the traditional DSO. I think it's maybe a flavor or a type of business that can exist, in parallel with traditional business structures.
Yeah, and I think right now,
that's what I would say.
When I got started in dental, like I was just told DSOs are bad, right? Just stay away from DSOs. That was the first taste of DSOs that I got. Then I started meeting people, and I realized, wow, that was a really cool business idea that they had, or this is a really cool one. And I'm like, oh, that one doesn't. I wouldn't necessarily want to be involved with that one, right? And so everybody has these different flavors of DSOs. And so DAO is going to allow for just a totally different way to approach that. And so now walk me through, I know you've talked to some people who are more entrenched in the DSO industry. Maybe they own a DSO, or they have bigger DSOs, and walk me through some of the fears that they have, and then how you're talking them through that and explaining what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So, I guess I should probably start with a little bit more detail on the concept of the DAO DSO, and then I can get into what it looks like, and then maybe what people's reservations might be about the concept of it. So the DAO can come in many different flavors. It's really however you want to structure the business. It could be a DAO DSO where there's a group that goes out and makes collective buying decisions through the DAO about what practices to acquire. There could be one where it's an alliance of DSOs that invest to get sort of some services under one roof without having to kind of recreate it for themselves, and so they can get those economies of scale. And it could even be something that's like a venture DAO that maybe does minority investments in DSOs and kind of provides a stack of services that helps them as well. In terms of reservations for owners, I mean, it's something that's completely new, I would say, and so there's not really much of a precedence or a history of businesses to say, hey, like they've done it this way, and it gives them a lot of certainty to how things may play out. But really, the DAO is just a traditional business. It's just operating differently. It's not anything, it's a DSO. DSOs have been around. This is just a different way of doing it. So my counterpoint to that would be like, this is something that's here to stay. And in time, it will become more normal, but it's really just a regular type of business focusing in a more digital, streamlined way with aligned incentives through tokenization.
That's awesome. Yeah, and what I would say too, what I'd add, when DSOs got started, everybody said that was the wrong thing too, right? And so, like pretty much universally, everybody was against DSO. So new things are always rejected. I remember when Invisalign first came out, every single dentist that I knew said it's the worst thing in the world. You don't touch it. And now every dentist that I know says, this is awesome. We should add this to our practice, right? So opinions change, and also software changes and gets better and develops over time. So now if you were to, I want to walk through some of your investment platform, because I know the DAO isn't just going to happen on its own. So how do you make money, and how do you get money involved with this? And does that tie into the investment side of what you do?
Yeah, sure. So there's certainly a lot of potential with blockchain and dentistry, and the concept of a DAO kind of making a loosely affiliated DSO to provide services and economies of scales to all of the members that are in that organization. But to get there, I think that we probably want to offer some value that's traditionally that's not blockchain based. And so what we wanted to do is we want to kind of create like a financial infrastructure that would allow people to sort of like a platform. We wanted to create a platform where people can invest in DSOs and really democratize investing in DSOs. Whether it's drawing different types of investors, whether it's institutional investors like your venture funds or private equity, or maybe even strategic investors, people that would provide value outside of just the money that they're offering to the DSO, and just retail investors, anyone who wants to invest in a DSO. We kind of want to open up the space by sort of digitizing shares in the DSO and offering them online for people to invest in equity for the DSO. And for the DSO on the platform, the benefit would be that it's kind of an alternative investing or an alternative fundraising mechanism. They can kind of raise money outside of bank loans, outside of private equity, and this would sort of be something that would help them scale flexibly. So that's what we want to start with. And then I think that you can layer in a lot of elements once you've got that investing infrastructure. Maybe you want to unite a bunch of groups together. Maybe they could give up a small percentage of their equity or revenue or something like that, and kind of use that to create an organization or a DAO, if you will, that can provide value to all of the members. And sort of, why are we all working in our individual silos? Why can't we just kind of create systems and, systems and value that we all benefit from in a more efficient way? So I think we're going to lead with an investment.
It's so cool because here's the way I think of this, and I would love your feedback on this. So when before the stock market, right, I would start a business and you would start a business, and there was no stock market. And then one day somebody came along and said, hey, do you want to buy shares in my company? And you're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, you can give me $1,000 and I will give you 10% of my business, and it's represented on this piece of paper. And most people at first would have been like, what? Like, how is that gonna work? Why do I want this piece of paper? What value does it have? And it's because the future. And then what I would explain is, well, the future value of my company is going to go up. So that $1,000 piece of paper will in the future be worth $2,000 if I keep going in this direction, if you believe in my company. And people eventually bought into this. And then you had a whole system built around it, which is called the stock market, right? And everybody understands how that works now, and it's very clear. And then what happened with this decentralization that's happening in crypto and in other places is things like, the best example I've heard is you can, like the Mona Lisa, I can never go buy the Mona Lisa, but now whoever owns the Mona Lisa, I don't even know, but if they wanted to, they could create shares of that, and you could buy portions of it, and I could put $1,000 because, hey, I want to own a little piece of the Mona Lisa because I think it's going to go up in value. And people are doing this with baseball cards that are extremely valuable, Pokemon cards, shoes. And so you have a stock market or some kind of way to trade and get pieces of different kinds of valuable things across multiple different platforms. And what you're saying, if I hear you correctly, is you want to bring that into dental to allow more money to flow in, where traditionally that money has no way to flow in.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. And I think this could easily apply to other healthcare verticals as well. I think the great way you described it is kind of the stock market for healthcare. And I think it's good for fundraising purposes, like we discussed, but also potentially in the future, especially with tokenization, it doesn't have to be done on the blockchain. It can be done just digitally. But with tokenization, with these digital shares, you can also kind of create a secondary marketplace for trading. So, you purchased some equity in the DSO that you work at, and you want to, have some liquidity, you want to trade with someone else and kind of exit your position, you can do that in a platform like this. So it really is kind of opening up the world of investing to healthcare groups and starting with dentistry in particular.
How big of a market is that? Like, how much money are we talking? Because a lot of times when we talk about this, like, it's like, okay, well, my grandma can put in $1,000 or what? Like, what's your thoughts is going to happen when you open this floodgate and say, hey, you can buy some shares or a portion of a DSO or this company that's inside the dental industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of demand. I think there's going to be a lot of demand, especially surprisingly from the institutional side. I believe that there's a lot of money on the sidelines that is kind of looking for a way to invest that's easy and frictionless and allows you to kind of have the due diligence of investing kind of done for you. We can do a lot of the analytics, kind of figure out if the deals are good, pre-vet the DSOs, and kind of offer really good opportunities to our investors. So I think we're probably going to have as far as minimum investment goes, probably somewhere north of $10,000 minimum, to put in. That is really flexible, but it just depends on the size of the deal. We want to run a couple of deals and make sure that there's a healthy appetite for it and that people are willing to invest in that way. But I think looking at other industries where people have kind of democratized investing through online platforms, such as real estate, they've opened the floodgates and there's been crazy demand for these platforms. So dental, we all know how, lucrative dental can be.
Like what? Give me an example. Like, what do you mean by that in real estate? Like,
Yeah.
What do you
so
mean?
they'll take big deals that a traditional, that you'll need a lot of money to get into, and they'll kind of offer a platform where multiple investors online can come in and kind of syndicate on a deal. They all kind of pitch in, and then together collectively, they'll raise that 1 or 2 million or whatever that number is that would be bigger than the sum of their parts. And they could also provide a lot of value to that group. All these investors, it's not just the money. It could also be the fact that they're strategic investors that I said before that now have like skin in the game and want to help the DSO scale because they've got some exposure in terms of equity.
And how will this impact, or in your experience when you see this in other industries, how does this end up impacting? You got a couple roads right now. Basically, you have private debt where the doctor comes in but you can only take that so far, right? And then there's private equity. That's about it right now, right? Those are really your two options. And then this is going to be a third option. How will this shake up those other two options?
I think, okay. So what I would say is I think we're trying to target in between the two. I don't think we're necessarily trying to buy it. We're not trying to buy out the groups, late stage, like a PE group might want to. And we're not trying to give funding to the person who's just starting off with one clinic. We're in between. So I don't think we're really going to be eating any piece of that pie or affecting their business. But I think what we will be doing is we'll be making, financing and the availability of capital to be a lot more accessible for all these people and groups so that they can scale quicker. So I think it's going to open up the door for a lot of rapid growth on flexible terms.
Yeah.
And I think also for DSOs and private equity, I would say it's a platform where you can kind of discover groups and you can see, like, it's good for their deal flow. So I think they have a reason to be on the platform as well, even though, they may be an alternative means of financing.
I love that. So if I want to buy a practice, then I'm still going to do it the traditional way. I'm going to go out and get a bank loan, and banks are going to be happy to do that because it's a safe investment. But there is that middle ground where you can't really borrow anymore from the bank. And then also private equity may not be ready for you, or you may not be ready for them. And you just don't have the infrastructure to support that yet. And so you need to get a little bit further. So I see how this would actually help speed that along and help them get to their goals a little bit faster. And then also, I think this would make you, and I may be wrong on this, but I think this would make you more attractive to private equity because you have already gotten a chunk of money and it shows that you were able to utilize it in a positive way. And that's awesome. And it's much different than a bank loan that you're getting just on one practice.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you look at if you're familiar with like Y Combinator or other startup accelerators or incubators, the companies that go through there sort of are pre-vetted, and also are of a certain standard. So if we, are offering quality deals and having good investments and good growth, I definitely see us being like a symbol or a stamp of approval in a sense that, hey, they've been vetted by these guys, and so they must be worth looking at least. Yeah.
Vetted and then execute. They have to execute, right? Because if they don't
Right.
execute, then yeah, and then there's going to be standards of execution too. That like these
Mm-hmm.
guys executed 4x what the other guys executed, and so that's going to make you a much more appealing option, right? Like you were much more efficient with the money that you were able to have. So it creates that opportunity, and I think that's amazing. Now, how does blockchain play into this? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So I think for our initial platform, we're not trying to tokenize things on the blockchain, but we want to move towards that in this business type
Well,
of investing.
let's define that before we even go down that road. Let's define tokenized and blockchain. Like, what does that mean in the most layman term possible?
Yeah. Okay. So blockchain is basically a way of storing information on something that's called a blockchain. It's a decentralized way in which there's a bunch of different people essentially hosting data and kind of validating it against the data sets that are out there to make sure that, hey, like this is the authentic truth. And so it's basically decentralized storage on a spreadsheet in a way, and you can run different sort of contracts on it. And in terms of tokenization is kind of just in the scenario that we're talking about, it's taking something and representing it as a share or a token on the blockchain. And for what we're doing, there's two different types of tokens. There's utility tokens and there's security tokens. Utility tokens are like Bitcoin or Ethereum. They go up one day, they go down another day. They're not backed by any asset. Security tokens are like digital shares. There's something behind it that's backing it. And that's what we're really interested in the platform at the start. I think there's a lot of use cases for utility tokens, but we're interested in kind of making the investing process more frictionless with security tokens at some point.
Yeah.
And that's a blockchain technology that would allow us to kind of have digital shares, but on the blockchain. And the benefit of all of that would be that it's, the transfer times are pretty much instantaneous for the stock. You don't really need a middleman to run a marketplace. It's transparent. You can kind of see all the transactions that you want to. It's very secure, and it's very cheap to do those transactions. You can move millions of dollars for cents on the right blockchains. So it's really the future of investing, and kind of storing
100%.
value online.
Yeah, I love that. And so just to even break it down in a simpler term, like the way I understand it, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, is for a long time, people tried to figure out the double spend on digital transactions, right? So if I was to buy something from you online, how did I not keep my money and give it to you if it's digital, right? Because with the paper dollar, you don't have to worry about that because you can just transfer the paper dollar. And for a long time, people couldn't figure that out. And then that's when, and multiple people tried for a long time. And then that was kind of the mathematical miracle of Bitcoin. Was not only was it secure, not only did nobody, it's not centralized, so no one actually holds it. It's decentralized, but it's basically like a ledger that everybody can see what's going on, and there's no double spend. So when I give you my Bitcoin, it's no longer in my wallet and vice versa. And that was the first of its kind to be able to transfer that value, take money out of it, just anything, any piece of information or anything. And so now everybody's been building on top of that. And so what you see coming is an opportunity for people to invest inside of dental on that. And then how does that, when you say these tokens, like how does that tie into that? Like what would I buy? Give me an example of what token I would buy.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways that it could work. You could tokenize different things. And when I say tokenize, I kind of just mean having shares of the company available digitally hosted on the blockchain. You could tokenize a DSO, you could tokenize, and by that I mean you can tokenize the equity in the DSO. So each token represents, let's just say there's 100 tokens and each token represents 1% of the company. You may be entitled to cash flow. You may just, be benefiting when the company sells and exits. There's different ways you can program the tokens. And I think for us, what we want to do is we thought about tokenizing a DSO. And that kind of makes sense that, hey, you could have your own internal market and you can sell. But I think what would make more sense on this platform is we want to raise a fund to invest alongside this platform. So the platform, all the investments would be kind of trickling in, ad hoc. from lots of different people. But we also want to have a fund with the investment thesis of like, hey, DSOs are a great investment, and they're, once they're in a sweet spot, they really have a lot of room for explosive growth. And we kind of want to make a fund where we can invest alongside the platform and also tokenize that fund. So when we tokenize that fund, what does that mean? That means in traditional venture capital, your fund may be locked up that you've put into the investment for like 10 years. Well, when you tokenize them, you can kind of get this broad exposure to like maybe 10 of the best performing DSOs on this platform. And then you also have the ability to trade in and trade out of your position. So it's like...
So almost like an S&P 500,
exactly.
If we were going to make it simple, of these DSOs that you can get your hands on, and then the DSOs have access to that money. That's what they would want to be.
Exactly,
yeah.
Right? And a lot of people, may want to invest in dental, but may not have the expertise to kind of pick a specific DSO, or may want to go through that process. So this is a really easy way for them to get, good returns and good exposure to a variety of DSOs, mitigate risk, and also have the ability, that there's going to be more people with that token. And that means that there's going to be more people that may want to buy it or sell it, and more activity around it. So, you're going to get a lot more value out of the liquidity of that token. So I think that will be a really interesting investment class. And they're doing this in other industries. They're tokenizing venture funds and kind of basically doing what I just described. And I think in dental, it would be a really interesting and successful way to kind of expose that alternative asset in DSOs.
Okay, got it. And then here's the downside. So I'm going to talk about some of the downside of what people might be thinking on this, and I would love your thoughts on this. So number one, you got NFTs, which are all in blockchain, right? And everybody's just like, it's almost become comical, and with the stuff that's going on there, right? And now I'm not saying there's not functional use for NFTs, but you have like there's like monkeys that are selling for millions of dollars, and it doesn't make sense, right? And so you got that. And then you also have crypto, which there's some very interesting plays in crypto, but there's also probably 90% of them are bad. The way I think about it is during the .com boom, when everybody started putting .com at the end of their business name, like 90% of those businesses disappeared. They went out of business because it was like a gold rush. Everybody was rushing there to get their hands on the gold. But if you pick the winners, if you pick the people, if you believed in the technology, which was internet, which that's a crazy point too. Like a lot of people didn't believe in the internet. I had multiple people tell me this is a fad. There's nobody's going to use this, right? But obviously a lot of people did believe in it. And so if you pick Google, if you picked Amazon, if you picked the right .com businesses, then you were insanely successful if you invested into those. But if you picked the 90% that were wrong in the wrong bucket, you failed. I feel that the crypto space is in a very similar, crypto, blockchain, NFTs, all that stuff is in a similar state right now. Is that how you see it too? Or like, how would you defend it against criticism like that?
I think that's a great point. Honestly, I think that it's an incredibly speculative market in general. There's a lot of things out there that aren't rooted in firm value. To your point about kind of filtering out the good stuff from the bad stuff, I would say that, a lot of the stuff on the utility token side, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the artwork NFT stuff that you were talking about, like Bored Apes, I think a lot of that is kind of untested and not rooted in sort of traditional value. So it's kind of up in the air. It's only really, though, I would say, if you look at security tokens and utility tokens, or security tokens and cryptocurrency, there's only a small amount of overlap. Security tokens are much more like they're 95% like your traditional stocks, just on the blockchain. Whereas utility tokens are just this cryptocurrency, like I don't want to say madness, but it's just very unpredictable. The price it's not attached to an asset. And because of that, they're really, really different things. I think there's value in both of them, but I would say what we're starting with is kind of putting our foot forward with like really solid sort of, a good financial investment that's tied to something that's producing money. It's not, something that's just up in the air where people arbitrarily decide that, like, hey, Bitcoin is worth 30,000 one day and 20,000 the next day. So my answer to that would be they're just two very different things. But there's value in doing both.
There's value. And then you can move them into safe markets or safe havens like dental, right? So you can take the technology that is being used in a risky way but it's a sound technology. Like the internet, right? The internet, you can do crazy businesses that are very, very risky, huge upside, and almost always lose. But like social media is a good example. If you start up a social media company on the internet, the chances of you losing is like 99.999%. But if you get it right,
Mhm.
the upside's so massive. I feel like, so the technology's good if you get it right, but you got to get it right. You got to get it into a safe place. And I feel like dentistry is very, very safe, but it's also really behind on in technology. So I think one of the things, and I know this doesn't impact what you guys do, right? So, but I think there's some correlation here. So like dental's behind on technology from a marketing standpoint, from a practice management standpoint, from an infrastructure, and if you're trying to build an enterprise model, like how you're going to do that, it's really behind on those kind of things. You can come over the top and still put your what you're talking about doing, and that won't impact you. But just dental being behind in technology overall, it almost seems far-fetched, some of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly the future. I think you've got to be smart in a business sense for anyone who's going out there trying to do these things about how you implement the technology, because it's definitely very disruptive and it's very, yeah, it's not the norm. But I think it's certainly here to stay. And I think, in the next 10, 20 years, I think you're going to see a proliferation of these DAOs in the dental space. And the infrastructure for making these DAOs, they may sound really complicated, like, oh, it's on the blockchain and smart contracts. But there are companies out there that make creating a DAO, managing it, and doing business on it as easy as
Really
spinning
simple.
out a website on Shopify. So
Yeah.
they exist. And when the
Because
tools are there,
the technology's already been built. It's like the internet. Once the
exactly.
internet was built, it's already built. Now you just have to build how this is going to work inside of the internet. I really like that. So your professional opinion for everybody out there is to go and put all their money in Bitcoin. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it is quite low. It is quite low, and I'm sure it's going to go up. I think so.
Me too.
Not financial advice, but I think it'll go up. But who knows, right? It's wild out there.
It is. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. I think it's going to go up too. It actually just spiked yesterday. It made a nice little jump, and the stock market did too. I've noticed that this is totally off topic, and if you don't want to answer this, fine. But I noticed that for a long time, Bitcoin wasn't correlated to the markets, but then it correlated itself back to the markets, and then there's a bunch of theories that it's either going to stick to the markets or it's going to decorrelate again, meaning the
Yeah,
stock market goes up while Bitcoin goes down, or vice versa, or they move in correlation with each other. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can see why sometimes they'd be moving in tandem, but it's such a complex thing that it's hard to break down because of all the forces. And honestly, there's so and with crypto, you can think one thing and you can have the greatest reason, the biggest conviction that hey, it's going to move in one way, and then next day you wake up and it's like
Slaps you.
completely to the different direction, right? So I can never predict it honestly. I just feel like the underlying technology opens up a lot of business opportunity. And that is what I'm really certain in terms of the long-term value. And one more point that I kind of wanted to add in there is, you were talking about how there's all this risky crypto and kind of we're building on top of it and we can kind of funnel a lot of the good stuff that's going on there into our platform. It's really interesting to note that on the platform, what we can do at some point, if we enable it, is we can kind of allow people to take their crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or some of the bigger coins, and instantly purchase equity in DSOs, which is really cool. The way it works is it gets converted into US dollars, and then the DSO doesn't sit there with receiving Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Yeah, that's
but
scary.
it's a seamless transaction basically. So
That's really cool.
It's kind of interesting to think, what all this money that's out there, like would it enter?
I would love to invest. Yeah. I would love to invest in a DSO. Like if you guys had this platform, I could put money in it. I would put cash in it, but I wouldn't put my Bitcoin in it. So
yeah, you can put whatever in. I think that's the beauty of it, right? Yeah. Like whatever people want to do, if they have Bitcoin, if they have cash, it's just opening up the whole entire digital economy kind of.
Do you think Bitcoin will ever get to $1 million?
I have no idea. Maybe not. Maybe something will come and kind of like supplant Bitcoin as like a digital coin. Maybe they'll have some breakthrough in like computing or quantum computing that makes Bitcoin kind of like, archaic.
What do you mean by
like
that quantum computing? Like
I'm not an expert on this by any means, but my understanding is with some of the cryptography and and blockchain, if you have a computer that's just really, really powerful, maybe a quantum computer, maybe it can kind of compromise the security there. But like I said, I'm not an expert.
They've tried, right? They've tried. Yeah. I know they've tried a bunch to try to figure that out, how to break into Bitcoin, but so far nobody's been able to do it.
Yeah, so far it's good, but I just wonder what the future looks like, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, who knows? So they're always coming up with new things, right? Whether it's a new
Yeah,
coin or new technology that makes Bitcoin, no longer number one.
that's so cool. Awesome. This has been really
Yeah.
good. Anything that I didn't cover?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, like I said, we're making an investing platform that allows people to easily invest into DSOs and for DSOs to raise money. And then we're also trying to, you know, incorporate elements of blockchain in there as time goes on, whether it's with security tokens and kind of making digital shares, or whether it's creating this DAO DSO that kind of brings together a lot of people that are operating separately and unifies them and kind of adds value in a way that people couldn't kind of create individually.
So where,
Yeah.
if someone wants to connect with you or learn more, invest, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think the best way would be to go to our website. Our website is taohealthcapital.com, TAO healthcapital.com. And it's basically a form. You can either do that or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Neil Patel. And happy to chat about what we're building and what we're doing. And also kind of always happy to bounce around ideas with other people who are interested in the space. So thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
been a pleasure chatting about all this kind of crazy blockchain stuff.
I love it. I think it's the future. I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of understanding it, learning about it, and just figuring out how to use it to your advantage. So great job today explaining everything.